is presented by Lucy Stevenson, and she's one of our own Master Gardeners. And these free classes are held every month on the second Saturday, and there's a wide range of topics. We have a survey for you to fill out if you have topics to suggest. We'd encourage you to do that. Next month, we have Dr. Lockwood, who's one of the longtime professors at the University of Tennessee, and his specialty is fruit trees. And he is one of the most knowledgeable speakers I've ever heard talk about that type of thing. And so this is just one of our programs, and we hope if you're interested, you'll join us and learn more about what we do here. We'd be happy to talk to you. She's one of our own. So if you're Zooming, please don't hesitate to ask questions. We can see it on the chat, and we'll try our best to answer them as we go. And again, it's my pleasure to introduce Lucy, and she's going to talk to us about hardy annuals.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate it. Okay, so we'll get started here. This topic is huge. I will not be able to do it justice in an hour, but I'm going to give it a shot. There may be some things that you already know, and we'll kind of skip over some of those if it's too mundane, but I think for the most part, what we'll touch on is, and we're going to kind of focus, come on in.
Hi.
Hi, welcome, just have a seat.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We just got started, so
Okay.
you're good. And I do like to introduce myself as well as find out who is here. So when you get a chance, let me know who you are. Okay, we have Donna from the Master Gardeners Club. And we have Catherine, who's the president of the Master Gardeners of Roane County. Donna Bowles, who's also a member of our esteemed organization. And who else?
Who are you? Oh, I'm Stacy Lucchesi. I live in Harriman, and my sister May, she'll tell you who she is. And
Y'all been here before?
I haven't been back since the Bluebird class.
Oh, okay.
And
I recognize.
yeah.
Hi, Mark, come on in.
So I'm sorry we're late.
No, we just got started here. So that's Mark Banker. Appreciate you joining us.
Sourdough bread this morning, I'll learn something.
Oh.
Oh my gosh, I'll get you started. I make sourdough.
Oh, do you?
I've been wanting to become a master gardener for years and years and years.
Oh, excellent.
I retired this year, so I missed the deadline for the classes to become a master gardener for this year, but I'm going to sign up for next year. I'm planning it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Now that I'm retired, and I have a little bit of time working part-time right now.
Well, welcome, and I'll be glad to have you next year as well.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
and my name is May Kotepi, and I'm Stacy's big sister. And
I like how you throw that big sister. Let them know who's the boss.
So, anyway, I've been wanting to come to these too. Stacy told me about it. I saw actually the sign in the Roane County Park, which I love that park. It's got a beautiful job. And I also am interested in becoming a
Master Gardener
and taking the classes, courses or whatever in January. I don't know if it's time to sign up yet or.
We have the extension off agent here, and she can help you through that process, I think.
And then, so I'm retired now.
Okay.
I'm retired.
Perfect timing.
So I need all the therapeutic things I can do after 45 years in nursing.
Yeah. I can relate.
About that.
Yeah. I was nursed for 45. I actually still have an active license, but nobody wants me messing with
I
them.
deactivated it in California, and I haven't,
Renewed.
registered here because I just think I think it's time to do other things.
Yes.
So,
Oh, that was a great career, but it is great. Gardening marries well with it. It's caring for plants. And so it works out fine. Yeah.
So we have 4 people online,
Okay.
and I won't read your name, let them do that. But anyways, feel free to ask questions, and we were going around the room and introducing ourselves. So it's Mark, right?
I'm Mark. I took the Master Gardener's class, but I'm kind of a dropout. I can't say no enough in retirement, so I'm overbooked. But the rainy weather, I thought I have to come see Lucy. President.
And then we have over here.
My name is Peter Schools, and we live in Rockwood.
Welcome.
Yeah, and I'm Sonny Carr. I work at UT. I was kind of a plant science major, for a 3rd degree,
Yeah.
but I'm not doing that right now, but I'm planning to do the Master Gardeners.
Oh, excellent.
We'd like to do it together.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I have a big interest in fruit,
Oh, okay.
and he has a big interest in herbs.
Excellent.
So before you got here, I announced that next month is Dr. Lockwood
Mhm.
from UT, and he is the
Fruit expert.
food expert. He's known in 3 states as the expert in fruit.
Yeah, I had a class with him.
Okay,
I mean,
good.
he already came to our class.
Yeah. He's
But yeah, that's next month.
next month.
Oh, that's perfect.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It's a good time of year to work on fruit, so
Yeah.
anyways. But today we're gonna hear all about hardy annuals.
So thank you for joining us. Like I was saying before, this is a broad topic, and I don't know that, I won't be able to cover all the detail that you need in this 1-hour class, but I hope to pique your interest, and I'll be available for questions. I've done hardy annuals for 2 years and have learned something new and different every time. So we'll go ahead and get started. So what we'll cover next is, so we're going to talk about why we're choosing hardy annuals, why go there. We'll talk about site and soil preparation. And I want to just say that soil is sexy. Because there is so much involved with soil prep, regardless of what you're planting. I will spend quite a bit of time on how to prep your soil, because especially for hardy annuals who have a hard enough time struggling through the winter, they have to have the nutritional support that the soil provides. And we'll talk when and where to sow your seed, how to literally support your plants, because some of these that I talk about get pretty tall, and how to protect them from the elements during the winter. How to pinch your flowers, and most of this is related to flowers, but it does flow over into vegetables as well. In East Tennessee, we can easily start planting our fall crop of vegetables, and some of those last through the winter, like your brassicas, your cabbages, and kales. We'll talk about weeding, watering, and feeding the plants throughout the season. How to start seeds indoors. Now, last spring, I did a lunch and learn on seed starting indoors, and it's a lot of fun, and we'll touch on that a little bit here just as a mini review, but wanted you to know that that can be a big part of hardy annuals. How to harvest the plants, and there'll be a little short video on how to create a bouquet from your hardy annuals or any flowers that you've got, and how to treat the flowers post-harvest. Okay, any questions about that? So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the purpose of planting hardy annuals. A lot of people like just to have a cutting garden, something that they can bring in. And I didn't get it in the slides, but this fall so far, I've made 3 really pretty bouquets, just going out and foraging through my yard, just finding what other people might call weeds, but that have bloomed nicely and actually hold a pretty good vase life. So just having a cutting garden that you can start in the winter really helps to brighten the winter. So you can have container gardens with hardy annuals. You can just have it in the landscape and not cut it or anything, just have pretty flowers in the landscape. They're great for attracting birds and other pollinators. And the advantages are that though they are annual, meaning that they, usually most of them don't survive more than 1 full calendar year. There are some that are biannual that will go 2 years. They do survive cool temperatures and actually prefer cool temperatures in order to get established. You can plant them in the fall and they can overwinter and then produce blooms earlier in the following spring and summer. So like for instance, I'm starting some next week for the plant sale that we're going to have in the spring. And I did that last year and I had 200 some odd plants that I could bring in. So it works well for extending the growing season and because they prefer cool conditions. And like I said, they're not just for flowers. We'll be kind of concentrating on flowers in this session, but they can, you all know the plants you can start growing now. Name some of them. Got any ideas about what you plant this time of year for vegetables?
Garlic.
Garlic, okay.
This leaf.
Leek, all right. What else?
Seems like root kind of things and green things. Like
Yeah,
you said,
carrots
cabbage
are-
and kale or something.
Right, turnips, kales, radishes, cabbages, ornamental kales, just for prettiness, if nothing else. And they do have ornamental cabbages as well. So they're not just for flowers, but like I said, we'll be focusing on that. And
arugula be one of those?
arugula, probably. It's a leafy vegetable that likes most of the things that you think of planting out in the spring, early spring, can tolerate fall and into winter.
So lettuce and spinach?
Lettuce and spinach, yeah. You can harvest, you probably get a good harvest of lettuce before it gets too cold. Yeah. And many of these plants will reseed, even though they're annuals, they'll reseed so that you might as well think of them as perennials because they'll come back next
That's
year.
good to know, because
Yeah.
that's what I've always kind of stayed away from the annuals, because I
Right.
thought, they're not going to come back. So
Right.
that's good to know.
And we'll talk about some of those that are easy to, you have to, help them out a bit. In other words, when they reseed, kind of scrape the top of the ground a little bit around them so the seeds have a place to store out. But yeah, it works well that way. All right, so let's talk about where we're going to have the garden. Because it's in the winter, you're going to want to have it at a south or southeast location so that the sun has good access to it. Protecting it from strong winds. A lot of people will put it at the side of a shed, because the shed will protect it from winds. If you have a row of trees or hedges on one side of the garden, you can even plant hedge rows on either side of your garden just for that purpose, for protecting it from the wind. It's really important to do the soil prep. I won't stress that. And if you do it early enough in the fall, like I did mine last week, and we'll continue this week a little bit, then the soil has a chance to acclimate and settle down and get to the point where it can then be beneficial for you planting out your plants later. Some people use greenhouses. We do have a lunch and learn session on greenhouses in December. And I won't get into that. I did use a greenhouse. It's not heated. It's more like a, what they call a tunnel house or So it doesn't have any heat. So I've used several methods to try to keep the heat in on the plants as much as possible. You know, bubble wrap and row covers and bales of hay and tanks of water that hopefully are painted black so that they can absorb the heat from the sun in the sun house, in the greenhouse. But it's a challenge, I'm just going to say. This year, I'll do some in the greenhouse, but I'm going to try, everything's an experiment for me. I'm going to try doing it just out in the ground using row covers. I think that what I've heard, it raises at 4 degrees. My greenhouse last year raised at 4 degrees. Now, if I put hot water, just gallon jugs of hot water on nights that it was going to get, way below freezing, I just set them underneath the row covers and it would raise the temperature at least 10 degrees. So that's huge. If it's going to be 26 and you can keep it 36, that's great. And then in the morning, the coldest time, what do you think the coldest time of the night is? That's right. It's in the morning, really. It's 6 a.m., 6 to 7 is usually the coldest time. So if you forgot to put your row cover on the night before, if you run out there real early in the morning, you might be able to save some of your plants from too much frost or freeze. All right. Any questions about how to set up your garden or where to put it? Have you ever done any of this before? Have you ever grown anything through the winter?
No,
No?
not really.
Okay. Yes, you have. What'd you grow?
Well, it wasn't in Tennessee. So
Okay.
It was.
It's in
very
California.
good climate, yes.
Yeah. Okay, never mind.
All year.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Mark, what'd you grow? Did you grow anything through the winter?
Fall vegetables,
Fall vegetables.
broccoli and
Yeah.
spinach and cabbage and things like that.
Did you use row covers or anything for them? They don't really need it.
Just planted.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, but again, we'll talk now about the soil, how to prep your soil and why it's so important. First of all, you need to get your soil tested, and to do that, wherever you've got your garden, you'll want to dig 6 random holes and get your soil out of that. Say that your strip is, I'm going to use a 10 by 3. It's a small space, but you can do a lot in a small space. And that'll give you, if you dug 6-inch deep samples of dirt, put them in a 5-gallon bucket, stir it up, and then get one sampling from that to send it off to the state. It has a little fee, but I think it's $15. It's not horrible, but it gives you so much information about what your soil needs for any amendments that you want in it. So I do recommend that. Then you'll want to get rid of any existing weeds that are growing there. Now, I'm going to show 2 different methods of prepping your soil. One's pretty extensive, one's pretty easy. And I'm actually this year going to do 2 side by side, the extensive one and the easy. And I just want to see how well they do for them. So this one is, we're going to do the double dig method. Is that? Yeah, it's a little, but I'm sticking to a 10 by 3 foot garden. So it's doable. And we'll talk about what that means. First, get rid of your vegetation, and then you're going to dig the first 3-foot row. Okay, so this is a 10 by 3 foot garden. The first 3-foot row across the garden, we're going to dig it out 4 inches deep, 4 to 6 inches deep. You're going to take that dirt and put it in a wheelbarrow, or just put it on a tarp if you don't have a wheelbarrow. A tarp will do fine. And then get a garden fork, a heavy duty one that's got about 4 or 5 tines on it. dig it down because you'll be at the subsoil at that level and you'll want to loosen that up. And you live in East Tennessee, so guess what that subsoil is made out of? That's right.
We have a lot of rocks.
A lot of rocks, a lot of clay, it gets compacted. So what you're wanting to do is loosen that up. So stick your fork in there, jump on it, put your foot down on it tight, and just rock it back and forth. And that'll loosen it up. You're not wanting to dig it out because that is a lot of labor. Just loosen it up a bit. And you do that through the whole length of the first row. And then place 2 to 4 inches of compost on that subsoil. Now, where do you get compost? Do you make your own? Yeah,
We used to in California.
yeah. Brown, and I'm not going to get into all it takes to make compost, but it can be involving, but you can definitely use for this size area, you could probably make enough. We have a lot of cattle around here. We have horses. We have a neighbor that raised or dealt with horses. So we went and got a bunch of horse manure, left it out. It's been sitting out for like 3 years. And that's pretty much the time you'd want to leave a brown compost in setting, just so it can break down. So I got that and I put that in the garden.
Can I ask about compost?
Yeah.
Because we did have a garden this year and I got mushroom compost.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what do y'all think about mushroom?
It's great. Just know you're going to grow some mushrooms too, but that's all right.
Okay.
It's not necessarily organic.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, they're pretty good
Uh-huh.
at the mushroom plant. But it's not totally organic.
Oh, that's good to know.
Because they've used chemicals on it for the mushrooms.
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
But you just can't.
Okay.
Now, I've gotten
Can't
the,
assume.
I've used it a lot in the past.
I got a bag of mushroom compost, not at the plant, but it's called Brown Cow or something like that, and it's mushrooms. But anyway, I put that on a big row that I was using. Little mushrooms up all over the place, but they go away. I mean, it wasn't even a big deal. So, all right, so now you've got a row that is 3 to 4 inches deep. You've rocked your subsoil. You put 2 inches of compost on that. Then you go to the next 3-foot row and you dig 4 to 6 inches deep. And you take that dirt and you put it in the first row on top of the compost. So now you've actually built up that first row by at least 4 inches, maybe 6, just for the fact that you've loosened up and you've got some nice, good topsoil on top of added compost. And you do this process all the way down your 10-foot row. Yes, you'll have now I used one of those narrow spades. They probably have a technical name, but because they're only about 7 inches wide, I called a row 2 of those. So I did 2 of those as the first row. So it's about a 14-inch strip on my first row. Does that make sense? Questions? All right, anyway, you put that second row dirt back into the first row, and then you repeat down, and then at the end, you roll your wheelbarrow down to the last row, and you dump that topsoil on that last row that you've emptied out. And then after you've got that nice and full, and like I said, it'll be raised at least 6 to 8 inches. Then you put another 2 to 4 inches of compost on top of that. Now, at that point, you want to add your fertilizers and then mix it in really well, or any amendments that your soil test said to add to it. And then that will give you a lovely, wonderful soil. So here's a little visual that might help you. So this is the first row, and you're digging in and you're just putting that soil over in a wheelbarrow or on a tarp. Okay. Oops. Don't look at that one yet. And then the second row, then you go in with your fork and you loosen up the subsoil. And then you go to the next one and you see, you just take that and you dump it over on top of your compost that you made. So this was mine this year. Here's, I don't know if you can see, this was the second row. Actually, it was the third. This was the first, and then this second, this third row. And you can see the compost on top of that. So as I went down, and you can kind of tell from this one, this is about halfway through, but look how mounded that is. And that's now got compost in it and loosened up topsoil. You've already loosened up your subsoil. So what you're trying to do is get a wonderful environment for your plants to not have to struggle to put their roots in. And as you loosen the subsoil, that allows moisture to get down into it. So it's a well-drained dirt. So I'm finished here, and you can see that it's raised this bed probably about 7 inches. I need to add the second layer of compost to the top of that. And what I'm going to do after that is, in my fertilizer, et cetera, I'm going to put newspaper on top of that, and then a little bit of mulch on top of that, really just to keep the newspaper down. It doesn't, the mulch is not really helping that much throughout the winter, because hopefully you cleared out your weeds and you won't have a weed problem. The newspaper does help a lot with keeping weeds to a minimum.
Do you put the newspaper over everything?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
Yeah. Now, why newspaper and not cardboard? A lot of people use the cardboard. And if they're from the boxes, you know, Amazon or whatever, those, that corrugated cardboard can be a good 1/8 to 1/4 inch. And that's pretty, a lot of material to decompose in a short period of time. So that's why I like newspaper, because it can decompose pretty fast. You can dig through it easily, because you're going to be, in a week or two, you're going to be putting your transplants in this. So, so that's one reason. The other thing you can use besides newspaper is a corrugated cardboard that they use in packing. It's very thin. Now, I looked that up, and they make rolls of them. They're $54 a roll, but that's for like 200 feet, I think. So if you want to spend a little bit of money, it makes it really nice. You just roll out your cardboard down the row, and it applies very easily, and it's a little heavier than newspaper. You still want to put a little compost on top of it, just again to help break it down. But those are ideas.
Where would you buy that?
Amazon, of course. I don't know. I've never looked. I have looked on mail order nurseries. Johnny Seed Select might have it. Park Seed may have it. Probably more likely at Johnny Seed Select or Select Seeds. And but Amazon does have. Have y'all seen anywhere else that could be?
Lucy, the other thing I've done when I need something that I have in newspapers, I use a paper like this.
Oh yeah, just
Cotton scrap paper.
Yeah.
You know, not as efficient as newspaper or the roll,
right.
but it's just something to, and this does decompose, takes a little longer.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share what they've done? Hold hold everything together.
Well, I would say that, cardboard shipping boxes, to your point, are quite thick, but cereal boxes and those kinds of boxes are thinner, and they probably break down quickly.
Okay. What you don't want to use are the slips in the newspaper. You know, when you get a newspaper, all the ads that have that glossy finish to them, they don't break down as well. And even if you're using packing boxes, you know, they've got tape to hold them together. You'll want to take the tape off because that won't decompose either. Okay. All right. Now, another method is a no-till soil method. And so what you'll want to do with it, like I said, I'm doing both of these side by side this year just to kind of see how it works. You'll want to plant your cover crop. I'm going to use crimson clover because it is so pretty in the spring. However, it's important that you kill it or tamp down your cover crop before it gets to the point where it's blooming, because it gets kind of reedy, a little less harder to break down, especially if you're doing things by hand. So I'm going to leave a little patch of it to let it grow because I think it's just pretty. Buckwheat is great for summer, but not so much in the winter. Doing winter rye or winter wheat is also a good winter cover crop. And then once you get your cover crop established, then you'll want to cover it with landscape fabric for 10 days. And what you're doing is just weakening it. You're not killing the cover crop. You're just weakening it so that it's easy enough to turn into the soil, because that's what you're going to do. Like I say, you'll remove the landscape fabric after 10 days, and then you'll apply your corrugated cardboard, as we've talked about. Newspaper is fine. And then you put your compost on top of that, another 2 to 4 inches. So what have we eliminated with this? We've eliminated the need to weed your garden beforehand, you know, unless the weeds are so tall that you can't plant your cover crop. If you've got sporadic weeds, that's fine. Your cover crop is still going to add a lot of nutrients and hold the nitrogen in the soil. Then you can lay a drip line on top of your compost. You can do that for either method once you get things established. And then you plant your transplants below the cardboard line.
What is the drip line?
That is a method of irrigation.
Oh.
It's not there's a lot of preferences that people have as far as irrigating. If you have a sprinkler system, you lose a lot through evaporative, just air loss of moisture. Drip lines or soaker hoses, you may have heard those. They actually are laying on top of the soil, so they're going to sink in much better than just a sprinkler system. Last year, I just used a hand sprinkler for this garden that I'm working on.
So you don't dig in the cover crop?
Do not. You just put it on top of the soil and you scrape a little, just enough of it just to cover it. That keeps the birds from eating all your seeds. I planted mine yesterday, hoping that this rain would kind of keep it, get it going. Well.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're ready to plant in your bed, you don't dig in the cover crop. You don't turn it under.
You don't turn it under. You're actually just putting your, and I've got a picture that I'll show you next that may help explain it. So this row over here is the cover crop that is growing, right? And then this row here is one that put the landscape.
Use some destructive words because we can't see where you're pointing.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been pointing all this time. Gosh, let me see how I can do that.
How about this pointer?
Well, I thought that, okay, so over on the far left, there's a row that's green that looks like it's about 2 feet high. That's your cover crop that you planted out. Okay. Over on the right, where you see some words there, it says fabric being used to weaken the cover crop. So you put a landscape fabric over your cover crop that's now, say, 2 feet high, and you're just weakening it. You're just making it so that it's can be decomposed. You don't want it to kill it, but you want it to weaken pretty much. And then this row in the middle toward the back of the cardboard is the cover crop that has had the landscape fabric taken off of it. Okay, and you can see how much it's died back. It's not dead, it's still got a lot of green there, but it's died back. Then you'll want to, and this is one of those cardboard rolls I was telling you about. You'll want to put your cardboard, your newspaper, whatever, on top of that weakened cover crop. So there's no digging in this process, which is a big labor-intensive savings there. And then once you've got your cardboard down, then that's when you put your compost on top of your cardboard. Okay.
Is that the same as lasagna garden?
It's similar, yeah, yeah. The row that looks like it's got plants in it to your left is a row that has plants in it. So it has already had the transplants put in it. So they're going below the cardboard, cut out, and like I said, I'm going to use newspaper. So you cut through the newspaper, you're going directly into, well, you bypass the compost that you put on top, you're going through the newspaper and into that broken down now cover crop. So it's all a matter of the breakdown. So you've got to wait till these things start decomposing before you put your plants in.
How long does that take?
A couple of weeks. Well, this probably more than that. So you've got to get your cover crop in there. It'll probably take about 3 or 4 weeks to germinate to get to that height. And then you've got to wait another 10 days to put your landscape fabric on top of that to deaden a bit. So you're probably a couple of months before you're ready to put your plants in.
So do you use seeds, or are you growing them in little things?
I'll be growing a lot of these in-house. It's not a free form, you know, nothing that you sow out. And then I'll transplant those in the cover crop.
What do you
Sure.
use to plant?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay,
I'll show you about that.
I've never done that.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I did a in-service lunch and learn on starting seeds indoor that should still be up on Facebook that you can look on. YouTube. Okay. Any other questions about this? How to sow this? How to prep your soil? I've spent a lot of time on it because guess what?
It's important.
It's important. It's really important. If you don't have a good base for your plants to grow in, you're just wasting your time, truly. And that's a lot of time and expense on the plants that you're putting in there. So please spend some time. This is a perfect, that's why we did this seminar this time of year, because this is the perfect time to start prepping your soil and getting it ready. Okay, let's talk about when and where to sow. So if you want early blooms, you want to prepare your soil in the fall and while the seeds are starting indoors. So I've got my stuff started outside. My beds are getting prepped. I'm going to start my seeds just pretty soon. Johnny's, is it Seed Select or Select Seeds?
Select seeds.
Select Seeds is more than just a sales site. They have all kinds of information on hardy annuals. Their greenhouses is in Maine, and they grow beautiful annuals in the wintertime throughout. And they've got lots of resource information that you can access there. If you are sowing outside, you have to have the soil prepped enough ahead of time to let it settle. That's where that 2 weeks. I'll probably do a mixture. Last year I did all in-house seed sowing. And this year I'm going to do a little bit outside and see how that works with some of these plants. Do buy from reputable commercial seed suppliers and annual flower plugs if you're going to go that way. If you don't want to start your seeds inside, there are, Park Seed. There are other online. I don't know of any local, perhaps Mayo's. I've never gone to Mayo's, but I don't know of a whole lot. Things like pansies you could definitely get from Lowe's.
Over here next door at the co-op, do they have, I know they have some.
They have seeds.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any plugs, any seed plugs already, or
I
flower.
saw them in the summer and the spring,
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't know in the winter.
I haven't. That's where I got my crimson clover seeds.
Okay.
I think it was pretty good. It'll last me for a while, those seeds. So again, I'm referring to the starting seeds indoor lunch and learn. And the plants should generally be in the ground 6 weeks before the first freeze. Now that first freeze date has shifted a bit in the East Tennessee. It used to be October 15th was pretty much you're going to get a first freeze. Last year, I don't think we got a first freeze till mid-November. So the other thing you could look at is when does how much light do you get? And when your light turns 10 hours a day, and I think I calculated that last year to be around the end of November, back up 6 weeks from that, and that's when your plant should go into the ground, or when you should start it. So that's about 1st of October if you're going to go for the end of November. All right. Any questions about when to start? Your seed packets, if you're using seeds, will tell you, start these indoors 7 to 8 weeks before the first frost. The last frost of the season. But if you're doing fall planting, you'll want to do it 6 to 8 weeks before the first frost. Again, Johnny's Select Seeds has a whole seminar on doing hardy annuals too. So you can look, I got a lot of information from them. Make sure that you're going to support these plants. So a lot of them grow pretty tall. They're living in an environment that could be hostile, a lot of wind, a lot of cold. They'll need support. And you can get these nettings like I'm showing you here that you just put at the end of, and the net can raise as the plant grows. So like snapdragons that we'll talk about, they get, they can be 2 feet tall. A larkspur, even the love and mist, they can get pretty tall. So you'll want to put the netting over it, put all your compost, get all your irrigation done before you put the netting over it. And then you can also use that kind of as a guide for planting.
So what's the grid size?
I think it's about
4 inches.
4 inches. And I got mine off Amazon too. And I just tied at the ends of the rows, maybe have those T-posts that I would tie it around, not slip it over, because like I said, you're going to be raising it as you go. If planting is dense, twine can be used to go around the whole perimeter. So if you've got a patch of Buplarum, for instance, and it gets very dense, or Bells of Ireland is another one that's fun. What?
Thank you. I know it was.
I've got some pictures of that too. So you can, if it's a dense planting, you don't need to support each individual plant. You can support the whole group of plants. So you just tie twine around the whole group of it. So it's like planting corn in the summer, you can just tie something around the whole group of it so it doesn't fall down. All right, so we're going to protect these. You can do it in a greenhouse. I'm gonna use the floating row covers this year to see how that rolls, because I actually use the row covers in the greenhouse too. So I tried a lot of things to protect last year, and it was probably overkill. I probably was babying them too much. They grew very well, and then almost were, too early, topped out. So you can see the hoops here. These are just metal hoops. Garden supply stores may have those hoops, and they'll have these row covers as well. And then they're only about 2 feet tall. Now, when you get a very tall plant in there, like your snapdragons, you'll want to. One method was to put tennis balls on top of a T-post. Put your net in, your row cover on top of that, and that kept it up above your plants. The main thing, and I'll talk about this, is to keep it off your plants. Keep the row cover off your plants, because if they're touching the plant and it frosts and you get a severe freeze, then it's gonna kill the tips of those plants as well. They'll survive. I would get amazed at how things survive. So these keep the pest out, squirrels, rabbits, deer, chipmunks, etc. So that's a good thing. It does provide some moisture retention. You will not have to be watering so much in the wintertime. The plants don't expect it, and you don't need to do it, but this will keep the moisture in. It will protect the cool season crops from heat or warm them up. And like I said, it'll give you 4 degrees plus. Protects from drying winds. It reduces transplant shock. So you've got your seeds that have all gotten about 3 or 4 inches high in your house, and you take those out and you put them in your beds. Well, it'd be nice to not to go from a nice warm house to just a shocking, 30-degree soil. So, and it uses hoops to hold up the fabric. And that's where I was telling you about using tennis balls on top of your post to keep the netting up above your plants. All right, so now you've got some beautiful flowers blooming or starting to bloom. Do you pinch them off or not? Well, the pinching does stimulate the plant to grow branches. So what was one single snapdragon stalk now becomes many. If you're doing coleus, the same idea. So if you do a soft pinch, that's just pinching off the first inch or so of the flower, and then it will branch from there. But a hard pinch, you go down lower, and you may cut it where the plant is first starting to branch off, and you cut it there. And you can do soft pinches with your hands. You don't need to use hard pinches. You need to use a very sharp, sterile cutting tool so that you're not spreading any germs around. So you will have a trade-off in height and earliness. The unpinched taller plants will bloom sooner, but they won't branch as much, so you won't have a full plant. Weeding, watering, and feeding. You weed weekly, but if you're using row covers, my guess is you won't have very many weeds at all, because we've done this whole prep with the newspaper, etc. But of course, you'll have to remove your row cover to do any weeding and then reapply. Water is needed manually with your drip irrigation, but again, you won't need water. How will you tell? Look at your plants. If they look wilty and like they're not doing so well, give them a little water. You can use those water meters. They're very handy to determine moisture depth, or you can use your finger. If you stick it in the soil and 2 inches down, it's still, if you pull it out and you've got soil around your finger, that means it's nice and moist. If it comes out dry, then you probably need to add some water. Fertilize with any liquid fertilizer and continue through the growing season. So if their plants start, and during the winter, they will start to kind of not grow so much. They'll start really putting it on in the spring, and that's the whole advantage of this, is to get these plants going earlier in the season. There is foliar fertilization, and a lot of people swear by that, just putting your fertilizer, spraying it on the leaves of the plants, and that's, they absorb it in through their leaves. And then when the seedlings get 4 to 6 inches high, you can mulch them. All right, let's talk a little bit about starting seeds indoor. I use a homemade potting soil. This is the recipe for it. I just got a big bale of peat moss, but now people are going away from peat moss and using just like the coconut coir, some compost. I use a super green sand and organic rock phosphate, and that's the recipe for it, and you can refer back to this. And this recipe, which is not very much, we're only talking about almost 3 cups of coconut coir, 2/3 cups of compost, and that's not very much. I can take a coffee jar, or one of those folders, whatever, plastic things, and you can make 60 plugs with that much soil. So, and here's my soil builders. Again, I use the organic phosphate and super green sand. And I may, depending on what my soil test comes back, I may use this combination, just sprinkle it over my raised beds.
So where do you buy this stuff?
I got it Amazon. I think Johnny's probably has it too. Co-op. I don't think they have it at Co-op. That green super sand is great. It retains the moisture. It gives the plant roots a nice loose soil to grow in. And so I've got a little video here. This is from, so let's get started. How to make soil blocks. Now, let me back it up for just a second. I use soil blocks, and that's what this gizmo is here. Yeah, let's see if I can get this to focus. There, perfect. Has to be a perfect place. You can see the little blocks inside this. It's like a stamp. And I'm gonna make my soil mixture, and I'm gonna just push this into it. And I can get out of the way here. And then once I've pushed it in, I'm going to just press it out. And this makes 20. So 3 of these, you've got your 60 there, and you think, gosh, they're so small. Well, they don't take a lot to get started, and that's what you're going to go with. So let me show you how I use the soil block. Press in it really well, compact the soil in there. And you can take that out, just plunge it down. And that's 20 blocks. Let's do 2 more. And then here's another block. You can see it's even better than the first. You see the pivot on the top of that? I'll do one more. This mix has been great. I get about a 90% yield in germination, and I've used my seeds that I've gathered in the fall. And that's what we'll use some of today, plus store-bought seeds. Looks good. Perfect. Okay, now we'll go to sowing the seeds. So the advantage of this is that you don't need any plastic, right? There's soil here, you squeeze it out, you're going to transplant that soil. I've got a bigger block that is a 2x2 that these fit right in. And so then you take that and you put it in your garden. So there's no plastic involved, no expense of that. These can, I think that was about, I'm going to say $60. I'm not sure. So they were a little pricey, but that's all you ever need, you know, and you're just, I use these trays, but you could put it on any kind of non-porous tray.
What kind of tray is that made out of?
It is a plastic, and it's a seed starting tray. I had the ones that had the 70 cells in them, and you can just dump your soil on top of that and smooth it out. It's faster, but then you got to mess with, I don't know. I just like the, yeah, pull them out. They don't, I don't know. I just like this one because it's so clean, and they seem to really take this combination of ingredients that I've used. You don't have to water this for like 3 days because that sand holds it in, holds the moisture in.
After the 3 days, then how often do you water?
Just you look at it, and if it looks, it may be every 1 or 2 days. You do want to keep it moist. You'll want to put it on maybe a heat mat to start with, and then after you see some germination, your cotyledons popping out, you'll want to put it under some light.
Thank you.
All right. So where do you get the seeds? Like I said, I harvest mine from last year's crop. We have seed exchanges that some communities partake in. Some libraries have seed storage that they will trade out and do seed swaps. Or you can buy them, get some good quality pelletized seeds, work really great, and especially the smaller the seed, the harder it is to, plant it out. So if they're pelletized, they've got kind of a coating on them that makes them first easier to seed, and also protects them a little bit. And then there's other things related to the sowing and germination that I won't get into, but you can broadcast, use individual seed containers. You have to figure out how long you're going to wait, what temperature does it take to germinate, water requirements, etc. And then you're going to transplant these. So you want to transplant your seeds your seedlings when they're about 3 to 4 inches tall. You can transplant them into a bigger container. And then if you have had them indoors and then you're going to put them out, you will want to harden them off a bit. Don't just, throw them out there to the wolves. You have to put them in a little sun a bit.
You put one seed, these might be silly questions.
Yeah.
One seed to each.
Yes. So, and there's little divots in this. Or if you're using the trays, you put one seed per cell. If you're going to use plastic that These are the bigger blocks I was telling you about. So this little block, these big blocks give it, and you put the little block in it, so it kind of grows. And here's the results of last year's. So this was when a couple of weeks after I seeded them. And then from the 10 days later, they were actually going down this way. No, that's right. 10 days later, they looked like this. I was using these little fabric bags, but they don't decompose as fast as I had hoped. They're decomposable, but I'm still picking them up out in my garden. So they may, but they're not very fast decomposing. And by the 19th of February, they were, 7 inches tall and ready to for the plant sale, really by the 3rd. I did a lot of pinching on these coleus. All right, let's talk about what kind of plants we're going to do. The ones that are highlighted are the ones I've had experience with. The others, these you can get from just about any reputable seed catalog or online source. Ones I'm going to do this year, I'm going to do the calendula, and all the ones I did last year. I'm going to do this toad flax. That looked interesting, and the corn cockles. Poppies, this is not, I used the Iceland poppies last year, and I did not have much luck with them. These are corn poppies. I may do some of those just to see how it goes. And I'm going to do this Chinese forget-me-not, which looked interesting. And then, of course, our traditional violas and pansies. And you'll notice the zones on here. This is 7A to 7B. We're in a 7B area here. You go up on
Unless you live up on the hill.
Yeah, exactly. When you go to Crossville, it's 7A. And so, the further up north you go, the lower the number.
So where are the snapdragons?
They're
You're getting to
gonna,
it?
this then for 7A to 7, from 7A to 6B are the ones that I'm gonna do the bachelor buttons this year. I'll stick with the Queen Anne's laced. I may do the green mist, but annual phlox, I've got a yard full of it, so I don't have to really do that. I'll do larkspur again, and then your rudbeckias, and I'm not going to do those. They're plentiful around here. I'm trying to do something kind of unusual. And then the hardy annuals in 5B. So these can really do well up north. So the thing about planting them in the south is, at least my experience, they do great, but they don't tolerate the hot weather very well. So during the summer, they kind of die back. But we planted some out in the park gardens that I thought were just gonna die. But then they came back and looked great. They really popped out well. I'm also gonna do, so I'm over dianthus. I've done it enough. I'm not gonna do it again this year, but I'll do the snapdragons because they did so well. And I'm gonna do this white lace flower. I'm excited about doing that one too. So this will be on so if you want to use this list for your gardens, that'll be good. Hardiness considerations. If you use a row cover, you can add zone layers to it. So it's pretty much one, like if you use a hoop house with a floating row cover, just, put those hoops in the ground, put your floating row cover on that. That gives you one more zone difference. So if you're at 7B here, you can get to 6B. Is that right? Going in the right direction? Yeah, it gives you an 8B. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, last year I was in a greenhouse with a row cover, and all of mine did well, but this says that you can double up on it. So if you use 2 row covers, double up your row covers. It's saying that gives you 2 more hardiness zones. Well, you just have to play with that and see. But you do want to keep your fabric up off the plants.
So when you say 2 row covers, you're talking about a double thickness.
Yes, just a double layer.
Usually cut the line penetration. Right?
True that. I did last year in the greenhouse. I did at night. Most of the time during the day, I'd take the row cover off. But at night, I'd put the row cover on, and I actually used blankets on top of the row cover. Again, I think I coddled them too much. I think they could have done fine. That's right. Just leave them alone. They're cool annuals, right? They're cool. Don't give me any ideas.
Actually, probably a dime a dozen at the thrift house.
Yeah, really. So this shows you my greenhouse growth last year. I did have water bottles that I would use. And if I get those full of hot water and then put the netting on top of, or the row cover on top of that, really, I could get sometimes 10, 15 degrees increase. And then this is with the netting support. I just put it over the plants and they grew up through it. Here's some of the bells of Ireland. When I first saw that, I thought, well, that's a green flower. How boring is that? You got green leaves, green flowers, but they make really good fillers and bouquets, and florists will love them. And so I'm going to go at it again with a little different attitude this year. The larkspur does great. It's a wonderful cool weather. The buplarum, again, it's kind of a yellowish flower, but they're great fillers. I had some that were left over, and I put them out in the yard and then put them in the bouquet, and they last forever. And so I was real happy with those. I'm going to put them more, utilize them more this year. Love in a Mist or Nigella. Catherine's got some of those, right?
Thousands.
Thousands.
Zillions.
Zillions. I'm going to get some of those. This is Daucus, which is Queen Anne's lace. This particular variety has a little color in it. It's not just the white. So it's pretty. I'm over here just pointing and pointing and pointing. I can't see my pointer. Then the foxglove does really well. It reseeds itself. The larkspur will reseed itself. The buplarum will reseed itself. So a lot of these will reseed if you give them an opportunity. And foxglove is also a biennial, so it'll come up for you. Some varieties don't bloom the first year. They don't. They'll bloom nicely the second year. If they're a hybrid, this variety actually blooms the first year and the second, but then they're good at reseeding.
So Lucy, when you say the foxglove reseeds, my Love in the Mist, it reseeds, and I just leave it, and it comes up the next year.
Right.
Will the foxglove do the same thing? Or do
It's
you
to, and
need to protect the seeds?
I don't know. I'm going to experiment with that. And Gilmer's, she has thousands of seeds, of foxglove seeds that she gives us, but I think she just leaves them out, and lets them go.
So my foxglove is self-seeding.
Did
I
it?
have it in too sunny of a spot right now,
Oh, okay.
and it doesn't when it gets really hot.
Yeah. These plants kind of like the cool seasons, but they do come back in the fall. They'll show themselves. These were the snapdragons I grew last year. They were beautiful. And I pinched them back once. I think this year I'm going to be a little even more aggressive and pinch them back multiple times. So when a new branching happens, I'll pinch those and hopefully just get a whole mass of them. The Impatiens are now they are not they're not a hardy, you can't put them outside. However, they do great inside and they just give you a splash of color. So if you ever just want some color inside your house during the winter months, they do great with that. I'm running a little over, so I'm gonna plug on through here, talk about harvesting flowers. Just note to use sharp tools and make sure that they're sterilized. And for your harvesting spike type flowers, you'll want to harvest when 1/4 or 1/2 of the individual flowers are open. So on a snapdragon, you know, their flower spike can get this top. When the bottom quarter of them start to bloom, that's when you want to harvest, because the rest of them will bloom out. Daisy type flowers, you know, the disc kind of daisy, just harvest them when they're fully open. Harvest in the morning when the temperatures are low and the water content is high. And make sure that you put, just cut them on a slant. If you can't cut them on a slant right out of the garden, do it as soon as you get in the house. But you'll want to put them in water, and cutting it on a slant will let the water uptake be increased. Strip your leaves off at least the lower part. Any part of the plant that's going to be in a vase, it's going to be in the water. You want to get the leaves off of that. And have your buckets of water about 1 to 6 inches deep, readily hand available. Avoid stacking your buckets if they're because they could be dirty on the outside. You stack it inside your bucket, and now you contaminate the inside of your bucket.
So Lucy, I have a question from someone that's about soil building.
Okay.
The question is, do you have to repeat the process annually?
Not to that extent. So with the soil building where you dig and, you know, that one, you don't have to do that every year. But every year you do have to put a 2 to 4 inch layer of compost on top, and then your newspaper, and then your mulch on top of that. So what, you know, as the soil compacts during the year, that compost that you're adding to it will give it more nutrients, but you don't have to go through the whole digging process again. All right, this is, I've got a slide on the resources that I've used. I've just learned a whole lot. This young woman is up in the northwest. She's in, I think in Washington State.
On pinching and harvesting. You'll want to be sure to go back and watch those. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a video and
where it's important. And I just want you to know, she is a ranked
by category, by season to help you with planning your bouquets. The next is a disc. So that could be a flower.
Just a second. There you go. Oh, I can't see that. So you go to 10, 23. So while she's getting that queued up, this woman makes a bouquet in less than a minute. And so she's a professional, you know, commercial.
Right. So first one
yeah, she's a professional commercial flower gardener. If you're just wanting to do this for your home, what I did learn from her was just how to do a quick arrangement. Now, what she's got is all of her flowers lined up on her tables in groups, fillers, main focal flowers, little side flowers that she's doing. And so I want to show you how she gets click. Should start playing.
I'm going to walk through slowly, and then I'm going to show you a couple of 4 more so that we get a bucket of 5 and you can see the process. So I'm starting with my focal flower, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this away from my body. Like I'm actually going to point the head of this bouquet and I'm going to build on top of it. Then I'm going to take a couple of stems of this beautiful oregano that are nice and airy, and I'm going to fill in the cracks of the lily. So I'm just kind of I'm filling up some space. Okay, then I'm going to come in with a little bit of mint, And all this foliage is really just going to take up space in my flower sleeve and make me have to use like less actual flowers. Tuck in a stem of stock, but you can see I'm not sitting here futzing with this. I'm not really actually looking at it. I've made one sample at the beginning of the day and I like what I saw, and then I'm just going to machine these guys out. Then I'm adding a couple of disc flowers. Now watch, I'm going to turn my hands, add another one, and another one. Then in between the disc flowers, I'm going to add a spike, and another spike. So I'm often working in threes, but there's no set rule. Then I'm filling in the gaps in between those with some discs of color from this yarrow. Okay, and then a little bit of greenery around the edge. So you can see I'm just turning my hands. And then at the end, I add a little sprig of air around the collar of it because that'll just poke out of the sleeve and make it really interesting. Just a couple of stems. All right. And then at this point is when you want to have somebody waiting there. The person that is in this role needs to anticipate your needs. You're going to get super frustrated if they're not ready for that bouquet. So we're going to hand it off.
Okay, that gives you an idea of just how to build a bouquet.
That is really informative.
Yeah, and it's fast, you know, and it,
Outside of the bed.
yeah,
I'm always so into it.
right.
And
And I like her futzing. I don't futz with this. Yeah, now they put them in the sleeves, you know, and then they go into a bigger bucket that goes to the grocery store. But for your own personal use, you could definitely do the same thing. You've got it together. Now, if you do want to arrange it while it's in the vase, I got chicken wire and just wadded it up, put it in the vase, and that gives you little holes to put your, and then just do what she did essentially. Start with your focal flowers and then build around it. So that's pretty much how to do that. Where did my mouse go? Post-harvest, again, just move your flowers to a cool place, recut the stems under warm water, and then place your flowers in solution. So I think we've covered everything. We went over a little bit. Apologies for that. Questions? Amelia. It's a big undertaking. It's a lot of fun to do, though, especially growing your plants indoor and brightening up the house with the new plants.
what was that gadget called?
Soil blocker. I'll pass it around.
So in the interest of time, I'm gonna just conclude this and then we'll talk as long as you'd like. But thank you everyone for coming. I just want to remind you all that the Master Gardener program is the second Saturday of every month. Next month we have Dr. Lockwood, and he's retiring. So this will be our last opportunity for him to be with us. So don't miss it. It's a great program. And we hope you'll join us in our other endeavors. So, and
Thank
many
you.
thanks to Lucy for sharing her expertise.
And I've got a list of resources that are excellent. This woman here, Lisa Mason Ziegler, is probably, she's so easy to, she makes it look easy. And she's all about, her whole thing is about cool annuals. So recommend her. The Flower Farmer book by Lynn Bazinski. Lisa used her stuff off of Lisa's stuff. So she grew from her. And then this woman that you saw do the flower arrangement, she has a whole farm. A lot of these people have, you know, their whole farm that they make thousands of bouquets. It's only 2 acres. You know, it's just amazing what you can, how much you can pull out of. So yeah, harvesting and handling, I did get that from the University of Massachusetts Extension Office. So thank you again, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.